Back with another brand new episode of the Steve Freeman Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by the Artist Development Academy, artistdevelopmentacademy.com. If you're a singer, songwriter, artist, performer, content creator, we talked about that not too long ago. You want to grow your career in the right way, but you need the instruction, the information, the guidance, and the access to the people who have been successful before you. That's why we started the Artist Development Academy. All access members get access to our entire library of online courses that you can take on your phone, your smartphone, your tablet, your computer, your Apple TV, anywhere you are. The Artist Development Academy is. You can take any of our online courses that exist already in the library. Plus, you get a brand new online course every single month. We go into topics like songwriting, production, artist development. YouTube for Musicians is one of the new courses that everybody's loving right now to show you how to grow your YouTube channel properly. The Art of Songwriting with Reggie Ham, 5-time CSAC Songwriter of the Year. All of the resources and tools that you need to grow your career the right way. Not become famous, but start making money with your music and taking your career to the next level. It can all be found at artistdevelopmentacademy.com. Now, you save 30% when you enter code STEVE at checkout. You get 30% off your annual membership. So go take a look and take advantage of it today and start taking your career to the next level with the Artist Development Academy at artistdevelopmentacademy.com. Today's episode also brought to you by my friends at Performance Inspired Nutrition. I've been talking about it for a while. pi-nutrition.com. People always ask me, Steve, how do you do everything you do? What do you get up at like 3 o'clock in the morning and go to bed at 1? And yeah, a lot of the times I do, but I will be really honest with you. A lot of the energy that I have to get through my day and do everything that's on my plate, I owe to Performance Inspired Nutrition. And that is just honest. My multivitamin keeps me feeling great. It gives my body everything that I need. I drink the Ripped Whey protein shakes every morning. Big misconception here. Just because it's Ripped Whey protein does not mean that, because look, I'm not in the gym. I'm not trying to get a six-pack. I'll never have one. That's not my goal. The reason I drink the shake every single morning is because it gives me the fuel that I need. It provides my body with the supplements and the ingredients in an all-natural way that keep me energized all day and keep me feeling full, and that keeps me out of the pantry so that I'm not reaching for cookies or I'm not in the freezer looking for ice cream because those things are so good, but they're not good for you. Performance Inspired is great for you. If you want to live a more healthy and active lifestyle, check out all of the products, all natural products from Performance Inspired Nutrition. When you head over there and you do your shopping, when you get to the cart, enter code STEVE at checkout and get 10% off your order. Start feeling better, start having more and getting more energy in your day. Feel better. Know that with all natural products, your body is getting exactly what it needs to live that healthy and active lifestyle. Do it today. Head over to pi-nutrition.com. My friends at Performance Inspired Nutrition. Some of the most popular videos that I have ever done on my YouTube channel have been about music distribution. And in 2020, this year, my pick for best digital distribution company was a company called ONErpm. I've had a lot of questions in the comment sections of my YouTube videos about why I chose ONErpm, even though I put the reasons in the video, but that's all right. Leave a comment, and I always try to answer. I always tell you I try to get back with you. But this is a huge topic among new artists, songwriters, and producers. So today's guest is my friend, General Manager of ONErpm, Ken Madson. We're going to talk about their service. We're going to talk about the company and what sets ONErpm aside and apart from every other digital distribution company out there. So it is my pleasure to have my friend Ken Madson on today's episode of the Steve Freeman Podcast.
You're listening to the Steve Freeman Podcast, the real, raw truth about the pursuit of success in music, business, and life. Here's your host, hit songwriter, multi-platinum selling producer, and serial entrepreneur, Steve Freeman.
On today's episode of the Steve Freeman Podcast, my pleasure to bring in my buddy, my friend, also happens to be the general manager of ONErpm, the digital music distributor right here in Nashville. We're going to talk about some awesome stuff. I know everybody's got questions. I've got questions of my own. I'm going to ask those questions, and I'm going to ask your questions as well. So it is my pleasure to bring in my buddy, Ken Madson. Ken, how's it going, my man?
Thanks, buddy. It's doing, everything's great. I'm doing very well.
How are you doing with the whole COVID-19 social distancing, how's that affecting you with work every day?
It has been, well, obviously there have been huge changes to everyone's lives. And I think not being in a work environment is probably the most difficult thing for me, just because I love interacting with people. I love bouncing ideas off people.
Right.
But for the most part, from the business side of things, because everything's so digital these days, it's been a pretty seamless transition. It's been good.
Well, that's awesome. Well, you and I first talked to you a while back about having you on because, I've very well documented my experience with music distributors in the past. And when I found out that you were now over at ONErpm, just to give everybody a little bit of background, you came to ONErpm, but what you've done for the last 10, 12 years that I've known you is you've been a manager, an artist manager. Give us a little bit of your background, some of the artists that you've worked with, and that transition from going from day-to-day hands-on artist management with major label artists, independent artists, the whole gamut there, into now working with RPM and how that helps you do your job effectively for the artists that distribute their music through ONErpm.
Sure. I'll give you a little bit of background. I started my career after graduating college in Los Angeles, worked with a variety of different companies there, started out just answering phones and stuff from the fridge. For a production company, I wanted to work in television and film. And from there, kind of learned that I wanted to work in artist representation. So I worked for a company called Parallel Entertainment, and they had all the blue collar comedians. It's owned by J.P. Williams. They had Larry the Cable Guy, Jeff Foxworthy, Bill Engvall, Ron White for a little bit. And that's where I really started my management career, and worked there and moved in 2008 to Nashville to pursue working in music with a guy named Colt Ford, which is actually how we met, Steve. We were working in the same building, and I was playing you some songs of Colt Ford songs, which were really unusual at the time. It was a blending of genres for country music. It was country rap. So, I've worked with Colt Ford, Larry the Cable Guy, Brantley Gilbert, Josh Grayson, Nappy Roots, Bizarre from D12. I've managed a lot of different careers. And 2 years ago, I started at ONErpm. I got the opportunity to work for Emmanuel Zunz, who owns ONErpm. And I really love the platform. I love the way that they were thinking about deals in this environment right now. Not this environment as far as COVID goes, but this environment as far as digital and streaming. And I just took the opportunity because I really, really liked what the company was doing. And I've been there 2 years.
Man, that's awesome. Well, I know your background a little, in like you said, you and I met a long time ago when what you were doing at the time was really unheard of. There was no country rap, back then. And what Colt Ford has been able to accomplish has been amazing, and could even say that it has ushered in a completely new format, a completely new genre that right now is taking off. You and I have talked privately about people like Ryan Upchurch, the Lax, and other, and one could argue that those acts and bands and artists would not exist if it weren't for Colt Ford. Being able to survive and be successful without a single spin at country radio or radio at all.
I think that the big thing that Colt did was speed things up a little bit, because I think that the evolution to including sounds that weren't traditional country music sounds was inevitable in country music. And I think that he expedited that process. You saw a lot more people using 808. I mean, in 2008, people did not do that. I mean, It was a cardinal sin to put 808 into a country song.
Yeah, there were no programmers in 2008.
None.
If they were relegated to the basements of publishing companies so that publishers could make demos cheaper. They certainly weren't appearing on the radio.
Yeah, so I think that we were Colt was, and we were just as an entire staff at Average Joe's, which, managed Colt's career, still is his label. I think we were very forward thinking. And when we started that, we thought that we were just going to get it played on the radio. We knew the audience. We knew that the music was extremely competitive. We kind of had a marketing spin for it. And then we quickly found out there were just a variety of reasons why that wasn't going to happen. And at the time, back in 2008, 2009, we had to find new ways to market product. And that just happened to be the internet and MySpace and Twitter and Facebook. I mean, Facebook was just emerging. You still had to have an EDU address to use it. MySpace was really the place for music discovery online. And we utilized the tools that were available to us because we could not play the country radio game. We weren't allowed to. We tried, but they weren't playing us. So we found alternative methods, which, again, all inevitable. That was where things were headed. We were just doing it early because it's what we had to do to get it done.
Well, fast forward to now with you being at ONErpm, and it makes total sense for me for you to go from artist management to ONErpm because of the services that ONErpm, it seems to me, does take a little bit more of an artist-first, artist-centric stance when it comes to helping the careers of independent artists. And one of the things I want to ask you is, what, in your opinion, after being there 2 years, separates ONErpm from the different digital distributors out there?
I think that there are a lot of things that separate us. I mean, you've got different classes of distributors, and we really don't consider ourselves a distributor anymore. We consider ourselves a digital solutions company or a music solutions company. So, TuneCore, DistroKid, all those services are distributing music, and ONErpm does, and so does Universal, and so does Warner. Everybody's distributing music. Right. Distribution really isn't that unique these days. And there are also a lot of companies that are popping up saying they're a distributor, but they're, white labeling a different service, Audio Salad or Stem or whatever it may be. And they're saying we're a distributor, but they're really a third party. They're passing your music through somebody else. We're direct, we're an Apple preferred distributor. And I think that that's important to differentiate those. We have marketing. We've got our platform, and our platform's pretty robust and has a lot of very, very, very cool tools for artists to use. It is actually getting an overhaul, and that'll be launched sometime probably at the end of summer, maybe early fall. So it's going to be a little bit more user friendly as far as just user experience and how intuitive it will be. Okay, I have to stop you right there and say something, because when I did my last video and I chose ONErpm as my digital music distributor of the year, I have been answering hundreds of comments and emails from people that are asking me. One of the things that people say a lot is that they felt like the dashboard and the interface was hard to use. I didn't find that. Well, I've used it now, and I think we've put up 3 or 4 or 5. It was not difficult to me. It was very self-explanatory. So I don't understand where that's coming from. If you guys are doing this overhaul, what did you guys as a company see that other people may be seeing that I'm not, that made people think that it was somehow or some way difficult to use? Do you think that's maybe they've never used a digital distributor before, so some of the language was confusing? I think that's a big piece of it. I think so. There are a couple different things here to unpack. Number one, guys like you and I have used a lot of different, technical pieces of technology as it relates to the music business. So we understand certain things that I think a lot of people don't. You can say, hey, show me the metadata on your song, and a lot of artists aren't going to know that. And they don't necessarily need to know that. But this day and age, there are a few technical terms that, artists need to know if they don't have a manager, they don't have, a team around them, just so that when they're, going through these platforms, they can understand what they're doing. So I think that's a little piece of a bit of it. The other thing is that I think we just have a lot in our dashboard. So, I mean, you've got obviously the upload process. You can upload video, send those to Apple Untitled. You can obviously do music. Then those processes are very similar, but they're not exactly the same. So I think that's just one component that can be confusing at times. We have marketing tools. There's a difference between a pre-save and a smart link, and you can make those directly from the dashboard as an artist. We have an accounting feature where you can split a royalty on a master. A lot of artists are going to ask about publishing. How do I put it? Where do I put in my publishing splits? And the answer is you don't put in your publishing splits because streaming pays directly to the PROs. And Steve, you know what a PRO is, Performance Royalty Organization, but a lot of artists don't.
No, that's true. That blows me away.
Yeah.
Well, I get asked, where do I start? Well, you need to start by joining ASCAP or BMI. Well, what's that? Doesn't DistroKid do that for me? And I'm like, oh my God. It never ceases to amaze me, the lack of education that people, and that's just me being honest. I'm like, if you don't know where to start, you've not done that amount, you don't need to be doing this. And I know you can't say that, but I can.
No, well, but so I agree with you. Sometimes I am astounded that people, and there isn't a barrier to entry for the music business. There isn't a barrier of entry to be a manager. There isn't a barrier of entry to be a producer. You can just say that you are. You don't have to go to school for 8 years like a doctor does. You can just do it. And I think that there are a lot of people that think, well, I'm just going to start doing this because I listen to a lot of music and I love music. Or an artist who's getting started playing music, they say, all right, I'm going to do this. And, they are a little bit naive thinking that it's easy because, there are some things you just need to understand. That being said, here's where I sort of disagree with you. And I think that you'll respect this because you are an artist, you do create a lot. If the artist is truly an artist and they are focusing on their art, they don't have room in their brain for stuff like BMI, ASCAP, CSAC, metadata. They should be focusing on creating. That's how I look at it. And that's also a manager's perspective.
Yes, I agree. But that is tantamount to saying that they are focused on the air conditioning and the engine in the car and don't realize that when they grab the keys to go out that it has no tires. I get it. But I see what you're saying. And I say this all the time. It's because we as creatives are focused on the creation. We are not. We are focused in the music business. Creatives are 99% of the time focused on the music and not on the business. And I think that's what I'm trying to do with everything that I'm doing is going, look, the music is important, but what you hope to gain from that music will be completely impossible unless you have a foundation and understanding of the business first. Because the music is what you create. The minute, and I think this anyway, if you're sitting in your bedroom and you've got a Pro Tools setup or Logic Pro, or you've got a piano or a guitar, if you're in your bedroom and you're creating something, that's music, that's passion. But the very second that you expect that creation of which you've sat there and poured your heart and soul into, when you expect that to go anywhere beyond the boundaries of your bedroom door, that, my friend, is the music business. And when you want to put it out to the world, the minute you want somebody else's opinion other than your own, you have entered the music business. And I think that it is inherent upon artists these days to get the information that they need. And I think that's one of the reasons, and I'll interject this as well. I think that's one of the reasons why people hit me so much with the dashboard was hard to use, because of something that you just said. And I think it's when you go to ONErpm.com and you're an artist or you're a songwriter producer and you're thinking about distributing your music, I think unlike Ditto, piece of shit fucking company, unlike TuneCore, unlike CD Baby, unlike a lot of these other you are inundated with professional language, professional information, and places to enter things that these artists have never heard of because they are approaching it from a creative standpoint and not a business standpoint. You go to TuneCore, it's click here to upload your single, click here to upload your album cover, and click here for the stores you want to do. That's simple. That's a 2-year-old can upload on TuneCore. And tell me if I'm wrong, because I do not want to give people incorrect information. Because I didn't ask you before I just started replying to people. The thing that I've been saying as of late when I get the question is that ONErpm is not for everyone. If you are looking to just simply throw your singles out there and get them out there and make them available, that ONErpm is more of a distribution partner, not just a music distribution company. That's been what I'm saying lately.
Yeah, I think that that's true in a certain sense. So ONErpm is unique in that we have a DIY business. So anyone can go to our website and sign up for an account and start distributing music. And then we have another piece of business, which is really where my focus is.
Right.
And that is, and my staff's focus is, and that's going out and finding artists that need a true partner. They're probably a little bit further on in their career than just opening up the bedroom door. Though, sometimes those artists are making waves and, that ends up being anyway, get into that. But we're focused on part of a premium business.
Well, that's why you guys, I was trying to explain to somebody the other day. Yes, you have the ability, if you're that bedroom passionate creative artist, you can go on ONErpm and have your music professionally distributed. It's going to be safe. It's going to be protective. But then on the same side of the other coin, ONErpm also distributes record labels. And has a completely separate thing and I'm not talking about record label in a fucking box. I'm talking about you guys represent legitimate, independent record labels that are selling hundreds of thousands of copies and millions of downloads and millions of streams. So there's two aspects, which I think is great because that gives the ONErpm bedroom customer the opportunity and the chance to go beyond where they are right now should they start seeing some success.
Without a doubt. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you.
All right. So now I'm going to ask you a question that I keep getting.
Okay.
And I keep going back and forth. And I tell people all the time, you get what you pay for. So explain to me, why instead of charging $9.99 per year or so much, why does RPM have the model of charging 15% of the royalties in the sales instead of charging an upfront amount per single or per EP or per album per year to have them and make them available on the digital streaming and sales platforms?
I think that the main reason why is because we are a partner to our artists. When Emmanuel Zunz created the company, it was about empowering artists, and he wanted to be a partner. So the model that he came up with was a revenue split. The 8515s for our DIY clients, I really don't do a lot with that. I'm not trying to get DIY signups. What I'm looking for is more established artists that need more support. I mean, we have an entire marketing team, which is also global. That's the other thing that's a huge differentiator for ONErpm is that we have offices around the United States as well as in Latin America. We've got a huge operation in Brazil where we've got a very large market share down there, which is where the company originated. And a lot of times people think we're a Latin American company solely.
I've gotten that a few times as well.
Yeah. Which makes sense because we've just have such a large presence there. But we've got, over 30 employees in the United States based here. And we've got an office in Atlanta, New York. We've got a content capture studio in Brooklyn, the Nashville office here, Los Angeles, San Francisco. We've got a guy in Chicago. And then over in Europe, we've got Madrid, Spain, Moscow, Russia. We just opened in Nigeria. So, I mean, we've got a true global footprint and we've done, true global releases. I understand that when people put their music up and it can go everywhere and it's available everywhere, it's technically a global release, but we're actively providing support in other markets for those releases. So
no, that's awesome.
It's a very, very robust company when you start to dig into it.
I want to ask you, because everything is, and I've said for years, and I think you agree with, we've talked about this in private before, but music, regardless of popular opinion, is a visual format. And it's becoming more so. Talk to me a little bit about the video aspect and the video network side and part of ONErpm, because I got this question. Somebody the other day went, looked at the site, read everything, was looking at the contract, was looking at the agreement and everything. And they're like, they take 50% of your YouTube revenue. And I was like, okay, that's a 9-part thing that I'll need to unpack. And I don't have 3 hours to sit around and email this guy back. So explain to me how that works with ONErpm's relationship with the artist as it relates to YouTube and distributing and releasing your YouTube content through ONErpm.
Yeah, so I think they misread the contract because we don't take 50% of YouTube revenue.
Yeah, that's not the way I read it.
Yeah, that's not how it works. And I believe I would actually have to look at the DIY terms because I haven't looked at them in a while, so I'm not exactly sure what the split is, but I know it's not 50-50. But our YouTube MCN is something sort of entirely different. And it's not something that we offer to DIY clients, but it is extremely powerful. So MCN is a multi-channel network, and that's where people bring their YouTube channels in and they become part of this network. And as a result of being part of this network, you get the deal that we have with Google for YouTube. Not the deal that Google offers just anyone that can go in and monetize. I think you have to have 1,000 subscribers to monetize your channel these days. That's a barrier to entry for our MCN is 1,000 subscribers. Then from there, the work that we can do once you're in our MCN and we're a manager of that channel, we can really help to optimize your channel. Whether that's putting watermark on there, whether that's properly listing your videos, individual videos, or creating playlists within your channel. And then we can do work outside of your channel where we can cross promote within our network. So we can find similar videos. Like Steve, if you were in our network, we would find similar podcasts, similar music podcasts. And
wait a minute, there are other music podcasts out there? This is the only one, Ken.
You're the only one.
Shit, you are on the fucking shit. Right.
Everyone's a follower.
Okay, continue. So you would go out, you would find similar
channels and cross promote. So then, people that are interested in what you're doing would then be suggested your video and they would go, I'm going to check out Steve, and so they'd listen to it. And the same for music.
Okay. But say it's not. It is not 50%.
Same from the music video. Same from the perspective of how a channel is organized and the marketing techniques behind it.
Right.
Completely two totally different things.
Right.
Apples and oranges.
But for the sake of argument, let's say it. And this is what I said to the guy. I quick messaged back. Even if it was 50%. That is 50% that you're going to get of something you wouldn't have had anyway.
It's true.
So it is not 50%. But if it was, it's 50% more you're going to get that you wouldn't create on your own. So I guess what I'm saying is there are a lot of powerful tools that ONErpm has to offer. I do want to get in. We touched on this a little bit, but I want to ask you about the rights management and publishing side that you guys offer. Now, I have always said I encourage people to go affiliate directly and affiliate with their PRO directly. Pitch me on the idea of going through ONErpm for their rights management and publishing rights and administration.
So there are a few different things here that I think that your advice is good advice. And I think if we go back to earlier where we were talking about artists that perhaps haven't reached a certain point where they understand that, or maybe they're, very successful and don't want to learn about it. I think that there's sort of a turnkey system where you can, just sort of opt in and say, hey, go ahead and handle my rights administration for my publishing. And we're happy to do that. And I think that's 85-15, which is a pretty competitive split. As far as admin goes, I think you can probably find cheaper. You can definitely find more expensive, but I think that that's a very fair rate for what we do. Rights management, I think there's just a lot to unbundle. Neighboring rights outside of the U.S., there's a lot of companies that don't do that. And
a lot of artists don't understand the concept of sub-publishers. And when you've already got those relationships in other markets and overseas, it is very important. And if you yourself wanted to take the time to go get a publishing administration company, which first off, let me say this and let me make this very clear. A publishing administration deal is no different than a record deal or a publishing deal, in that none of you are going to be able to go get a deal with the publishing administrator or a reputable one anyway, unless you've already got a catalog that is developing revenue. They have no interest in just signing up to administer people's publishing that do not have significant revenue coming in. So going back to the point that you had, this is to me, it's an all-in-one solution that gives somebody that ability to have a publishing and rights management that is set up, that's turnkey, that's all under one roof, that prevents them from going out and wondering, well, hey, I had, this song on radio in South Africa or in Indonesia or in Norway or in Germany. And you may be with especially if you're doing it on your own, you have no way of knowing if your PRO is in fact going and collecting from those sub-publishers in those other markets. And that's something that you guys would take care of and make very simple for them.
Yeah, it's super simple. Yeah, it's very simple taking care of that. And then also, I think that there's a sort of a rights administration a piece that just sort of relates to digital in general. That's just turnkey and very, very easy. So as you said, it's an all-encompassing thing, makes it very simple, makes it very easy for the user, makes it very simple for the artist. We've done actual publishing deals, like full-fledged publishing deals on some of our artists. But again, that's sort of a different business than the DIY. There's just a lot.
Is there a specific, because I know we're going to get this question, so I'll just ask it. What are the difference or the parameter or the ceiling for someone to go from DIY to the more hands-on partnership program with ONErpm?
There isn't a specific answer for that. It's how do you get a record deal? What's the level you have to achieve to do that? There isn't a hard set fast rule. Obviously we want the music to be great. Everything that I'm looking at, I think, is good. And we want there to be some sort of momentum or something that sort of catches our eye. We do have a way when all of our A&Rs across the United States and globally, when we take a look at an artist, there are certain metrics that we'll pay attention to. So Spotify followers are important. Spotify monthly listeners are, I think, less important than Spotify followers. We'll look at, YouTube subscribers is a big one, total YouTube plays. Those are really, really sort of, those are very hard and fast things that you would look at that are going to give you very specific data.
And it's a numbers game. You have to be on a forward trajectory.
Yeah. And then there's that sort of, magic behind it, which is, do we feel the music's moving? Do we feel it's saying something important? Do we feel it's, entertaining? Are people going to want to listen to it? How does this fit into the genre? Does it not fit in any genre? And is that why we're interested in it? Right. Is it breaking barriers? There are just so many different things to sort of look at. But what we're looking at sort of as A&R for that service, we're looking for a little bit of momentum. Sometimes, we do a lot of catalog deals as well. So we're taking a look at catalog and what revenue that's generating over time. There are a lot of different things we look at. But then once we get the artist in, and we're trying to we do all different kinds of deals. I think that that's what's so exciting about this moment in the music business is that, number one, there's just a plethora of different deals out there to be done. And then number two, I feel like they're pretty artist friendly right now. Extremely artist friendly. And I think that's going to change in a few years. I really do. But, right now, I think it's a time for an artist to be putting out music. And when they put it out with us, let me talk a little bit about sort of how we organize our business and this service that I'm specifically talking about. ONErpm. When I talk about ONErpm, I think this is what I think of. I don't necessarily think too much of the DIY side because it's not what I'm dealing with on a daily basis. But we've got, number one, an account rep, an A&R, and that would be someone like me. And we've got, some very, very seasoned professionals that are doing that in the United States and around the globe, but I'll focus just on the US since that's what I handle. So we've got that A&R rep. That's sort of the initial point of contact. And then we have project managers that are grouped by genre. So that we've got somebody that handles pop music and works with the artist to create, a timeline, a plan, and then all these different services and marketing initiatives that we can put in play. We've got somebody that does country, somebody that does EDM, somebody that does reggae. We've got a lot of different project managers. And then below that, we have specialists, or not necessarily below, but in coordination, we have specialists that are actually going out and doing a lot of the execution of those plans in coordination with the project manager. So we have, obviously our YouTube team is very robust and we do a lot of work on that end. We have a separate YouTube advertising team, and I feel like our YouTube advertising team is fantastic. I know they are just because of other services that Steve, you and I have used in the past that, we outperform on a regular basis. So I'm extremely confident in that. We have social media advertising company, or a social media advertising specialist team that can do ad buys within that. Then we've got, some graphic design elements. And then there are other things that sort of get pulled in there, other specialists. We've got some people that are specialists with video content capture. We do some of that. We've got a studio in Brooklyn, as I mentioned, that has an amazing photographer, videographer that runs it. His name's Rafa. He's a great guy. And, that's a service that we provide that's included in these other deals that I'm talking about that are far more like a partnership than anything else. And then we provide those services and we set goals and we build out a plan to achieve those goals. And, hopefully we continue on. We've had clients that have been using ONErpm before I got to ONErpm that are still there and have grown from, had modest beginnings to now having a very, very, very significant business. And I think that that's really what it's about, what ONErpm's partnership is. It's about empowering the artist and then helping them to grow this business that they have and providing them expertise in areas that they may not have expertise in. And also, for artists that have managers, working in coordination with those managers, a lot of times we'll be providing value to that manager and DSP pitching is another team that we have, and it's obviously a very, very important thing. It's what people are concerned about, editorial placement, specifically on Spotify, which we could talk about for days. You and I could talk about that literally for days.
We have talked about that for days.
Yeah. But the in a nutshell, here's what I think about editorial and DSP pitching and editorial placement. And when I say DSP, I mean digital service provider. So Spotify, Apple, Pandora, Amazon, Deezer, Tidal, all the way on down the line, YouTube. All of these services have editorial playlists, which is playlists that they curate, and by design, they end up promoting those. They end up forcing those into people's feeds. So they get a disproportionate amount of streams. It's great when you get editorial, but getting editorial is not a plan. That is not a plan to release music. You can't say, okay, we're going to put this thing out and then we're going to get this editorial placement and it'll be off to the races. If you don't have the rest of the support below it to take advantage of that editorial placement and to grow that audience, it's not going to make nearly the impact you think it's going to. Now, don't get me wrong. I always want editorial placement. I always want it, but I don't build plans around it. That's not what we do. We don't plan around that. We understand how extremely important it is, but we want to be able to grow the business with or without DSP support. I mean, if you take a look at the history of the internet and sort of what happens, MySpace was the biggest music player for streaming music outside of maybe Napster. But at that time, I mean, more people were streaming music on MySpace than any other platform that I knew of. And it almost disappeared overnight. Those streams just completely dried up. People left. You lost you lost that direct connection with the fan. And if you hadn't been taking advantage of MySpace and driving people to your website and collecting their information in another way, you lost that user and they had to go find you on another platform. I don't want to build my business around that. I don't want my artists to build their business around that. I want them to, have strong marketing foundations behind their projects. I want to have, quantifiable goals that we can put forth, that we can put a plan together for and achieve those goals and hopefully continue to grow the business. And hopefully people like the music. That's the other thing that you can't do. You can get in front of everybody, but you can't make them listen. That's a really hard part.
No, that's the truth. And, that's what, one of the things that because I get more questions on Spotify playlist promotion and all of that than probably just about anything. And I try to tell artists all that is such an imperfect science that it's almost like what you said. That cannot be your plan. It cannot be the bedrock that we're going to release this and we're going to get it on New Music Friday, or it just, the likelihood of that happening is just not high enough that it should be a pillar of the release plan and of the marketing plan. And
there are roughly 500,000 songs globally every week. That was the last number I heard. So you're looking at a New Music Friday US is what, 80 songs maybe. So 80 out of 500,000. And then, by the way, if you get that editorial support, it's gone the next Friday. What are you going to do after that Friday? What are you going to do when next Friday rolls around?
Right.
Hopefully people have listened to it. Hopefully you've gotten a bunch of streams. Hopefully you sort of graduate to another list. But if not, how did you take advantage of that New Music Friday? What have you done? That's where I think that there's a big disconnect with editorial, and the artist thinking that it's a magic button. And look, I get caught up in it too because I want it. I want to see New Music Fridays. You look at it and you go, it's validation. It's validation in a lot of ways, but not the.
Can you talk a little bit about, because I know, again, you and I have discussed this privately and we know why, but I get more emails, messages, DMs on Instagram of people because they watched my whole thing about Ditto, talking about, now I'm hearing every day from people that are with other digital distributors. I have never had one from ONErpm. Talk about content ID and content tagging has resulted in other music distributors removing their content from Spotify. Now, you and I have talked about the whole illegal streaming thing, and I tell artists do not buy spins. It doesn't help you. It doesn't. My whole example is, if you're an artist out there and you're paying bots to stream your single, or you're paying for spins or anything like that, when your business hopefully takes the next evolution and you show up at a venue in a market somewhere to play, and that venue owner has booked you because you've been able to document and show them that you've got 200,000 monthly listeners, this venue owner's thinking, well, shit, somebody's going to show up. They're going to show up to see this person. You show up and it's an empty fucking dance floor. There is nobody there because you've bought those streams and it doesn't translate into the real world. So, But I've been getting lately that there are people that are uploading their music and it's being tagged by the content ID system, and somebody else is putting in a claim for that and having it removed. Talk to me a little bit about that process of people having their things removed and why Spotify takes the stance that they do. It seems to be you're guilty before proven innocent, and they pull this stuff down and try to help me and everybody else understand that process a little bit?
Well, I don't know. I don't know those specific instances, but it's extremely rare that Spotify is going to pull something down when it's on our. So, I mean, there's a couple different things that could be happening. The most likely is that they have used a sample and that they are not the owner of that song. And so when they put it up, they get it taken down because there's a copyright infringement. It's not necessarily Content ID. Content ID is a tool on YouTube used to identify musical compositions. People sort of use that as a blanket statement of a computer identifying some sort of audio fingerprint and recognizing that and creating, a copyright infringement claim that then is hopefully taken a look at by a human and resolved appropriately. Hopefully it's correctly resolved. But my guess is that they're using either a licensed beat that they don't own. They're using content that they do not own. And that's why that's happening to them.
Which I will also say is very difficult to make the different platforms aware, even when you've gone and done it properly and received the licensing. That to me, there is a need for something like that, because on YouTube, nowhere on any of the platforms is there a place when you're uploading something to go, I went to Harry Fox, I went to Songfile, I went to this place, I have properly licensed and paid for the royalties and the mechanical or compulsory licenses, especially when it comes to cover songs. I have the ability to do this, and there's no place to upload that. So these artists go and they upload their cover video or the video, their original song that they did sample a beat from, that they have the rights to use and paid for it. They do all this, they start their marketing, everything goes up, it's running, and then all the platforms pull it down because either Content ID or whatever, a copyright. And then you have to go through the investigation process, and then everybody goes, oh, we'll release the claim. Yeah, we see where you applied for the license and paid for it. And then it's almost too late, because then you're starting all over again. Is there anything with that you guys have worked on or been a part of, or as even the greater part of being a musical distribution and partnership company in this space? Is that even a conversation that's going on that, like, look, we as a collective, we need to have a simple, streamlined process for people, because covers are king right now. That's how artists get discovered now. But is a discussion going on of, is there some sort of a system that we can come up with that these artists can upload their license along with the video content or with the audio content to let them know on the front end while they're doing their iTunes, what is it? iTunes is 2 or 3 day review. Spotify's a 5-day review. When they're looking at these projects, oh, he does or she does or they do have the license to do this, so that there is no pulling down of the content at a later date.
I don't have so there is not that conversation happening within ONErpm specifically for covers. And for the most part, Content ID works pretty well for what we do. And it protects our artists that we distribute very well. We do get claims. We get a lot of different claims. And we also make claims to protect our artists. We're on both sides. I mean, we're in the fight for sure. But when it specifically comes to covers, I mean, I just don't have enough experience specifically dealing with covers to be able to give a blanket statement that's going to fit every different variation out there for that. So I don't have a great answer there. I just know that at ONErpm, we're going to fight really hard for our artist rights. So if there is a legitimate claim, if there is a license that's been, procured and everything's been handled correctly, then we'll send that over and say, hey, we've got, our artist has a right to distribute this. But on the DIY side, if there was a claim, it would it would take a while. It would take a while to get that undone, because these claims are created. Usually they're generated by computers with audio recognition of some kind. And then from there, a specific action is taken. If it's a song that's consistently getting flagged, and you could probably guess that the big artists are going to have a much higher rate of things getting flagged than, more lesser known artists. But if they're getting stuff that's constantly getting flagged, if Spotify is getting something that's constantly getting flagged, and then you're doing a song that's similar, even though you have gone through the right process, there's a good chance you're just going to end up as part of the flagging process and just be ushered out, even though you've done everything correctly. I think I like to think that if you do everything correctly, that you've got, if you do a cover, you've done it properly, you've gotten all the license. You've gone through all the license requirements. The cover shouldn't be taken down by Spotify. I know that Apple, I was just looking through their rules, which anybody can look up. I don't know, maybe I can get that link for you, Steve. It's pretty easy to find, but they've got a whole best practices and set of rules that they have on iTunes and Apple Music. And there is a note in there about sound-alikes. So, it just says it right there. If you sound too close to this artist, if you do the cover too well,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, if you sound like Taylor Swift, that's a problem.
Which artists shouldn't be doing anyway. If you're going to do a cover, do it completely different. Because if you want to hear Taylor Swift something, then go listen to Taylor Swift. Don't copy Taylor Swift. We've already got one of her. Do something original with your cover. Yeah. That I think will help as well. Not getting just flagged, right away.
Yeah. And then I think a lot of people are probably, I run into this pretty often when somebody will, and this actually gets pretty complicated, but you should do a whole nother podcast on this, but licensed beats through these sites, specifically for rap music. People will go and they'll license a beat and they'll run into, they don't own that. They license it.
Right.
And then they can run into some serious issues with different platforms and how they're monetizing. They can get claims generated pretty quickly if they're not doing it properly. I like to stay 100% away from licensed stuff. Like if somebody brings me a licensed beat, I tell them I don't want to put it out. I'm not interested because they don't own it. They're licensed. Not interested in it, but I like original stuff.
It's going to create so much work on the back end if there is a problem, and there's going to be a problem.
I've dealt with it too. Yeah. I've dealt with it. I mean, that's not to say that, I haven't put stuff out like that before, but I just let everybody know right ahead. Here's what your problems are going to be when you're doing this, and don't do it. I don't want to do any more of this. But every once in a while I'll talk to an artist. I'll get a good vibe. And then I find out all their stuff's not theirs. I'm like, come on, man.
Right. And then inevitably, it makes the distributor look bad when it's really the artist's fault.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not that big of a deal because, as I said, claims happen a lot. We obviously don't like to get claims, but we, have a team to resolve those claims. So when it happens, it comes up. I like to deal with original music, Steve. I'm sure you're kind of the same. Like you want, you want artists to collaborate together to create and put that out. It's not to say that, there isn't a time and a place for a licensed thing, but I'd rather somebody work directly with a producer and create something unique to them, instead of this thing that's out there in 100 different versions and the producer's done it so that they can use Content ID on YouTube to monetize their song in all these different places. That's really the game of the beat licensing world. But
yeah, you're right though. It's a great topic, and maybe have you, maybe somebody else on as well to talk, because that is not a world I am 100% familiar with. It's just, I'm
not 100% familiar with it either, but I know enough about it.
Well, it is a real thing because you've got places like Splice now to where major producers are dragging and dropping beats and ending up in multi-week number ones for Demi Lovato and everybody else. And it's literally just dragging and dropping. Of course, I piss everybody off when I say this, which is why I say it every opportunity I can. And that is, I don't consider people who drag and drop beats as producers. To me, that makes you a computer programmer. If you're one of these people making the beat, totally different. But if you're one of these people that it's going on Fruity Loops and all these other fruity fucking places, and you're dragging and dropping, that you are not a music producer. Under any circumstances, you are a computer programmer at best. And I know Ken won't say anything. But that is my opinion, 100%. All right, do me a favor. Give me, so that I don't have to do it, and I can, if I need to, when I get questions, I can clip this little part right here, and I can send this to you. Give me the 3 reasons why somebody should use ONErpm over one of the other digital distributors.
Number 1 is our technology. I feel it's far superior. It is far superior. We give the artists a lot of different tools that they can access. Steve, you were also talking earlier about artists that may need to learn a little bit about the business. We have best practice documents that are actually linked in our on our website that are pretty robust. They're updated pretty consistently, so artists are going to have a lot of information available to them right there. We have a very, very powerful network on YouTube specifically that I think is a very, very valuable reason to join ONErpm. We get, I think, last month we got 8 billion plays on our YouTube MCN, so it's very significant. And we provide a lot of support in that area. And then I think the other thing that's extremely advantageous is that we're a global company, and we've got boots on the ground all over the world. And every single person that works at ONErpm is a music lover. They love music. They love working with artists. It's a career of passion. And so the people that work at ONErpm want to see artists succeed. And we do, at least I know I do, go out of my way to try to make sure that the artist is taken care of and that their work's being properly monetized and that they're properly protected. Those are, I guess that's a little bit more than 3 reasons, but those would be the main reasons for me why someone should join.
That's awesome. I think those are the 3 best reasons. So I don't know. There doesn't need to be a 4th, 5th, or 6th reason. That's cool, man. That's really awesome. Well, man, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you taking the time. Everybody, if you want to distribute your music, you want to take your career seriously, one of the first steps is taking the distribution and release of your music seriously. And I highly encourage you to go to ONErpm.com, read all of the information, educate yourself before making a decision, and then make a decision. So go to ONErpm.com, take a look at everything they have to offer, and don't ever hesitate, as none of you ever do anyway, to reach out to me if you have any questions. I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. I've used ONErpm. We're using ONErpm on an artist right now, and then a really big artist we're about to be working with, we're going to be using ONErpm for that as well. So I only recommend things that I'm willing to put my name on the line for as well. And I'm telling you, I've known Ken for over 10 years, and I'm loving the results we're getting with ONErpm, the ease of use. And so it's working really well for us. So I think it would work well for you. Ken, thank you for being here, and let's grab coffee or lunch soon.
Thanks, Steve.
I hope you guys got as much out of that as I did. Ken is a great guy, and I hope you got some very valuable information about digital distribution overall, about some of the processes that you need to be thinking about. More importantly, how you should be educating yourself about the business, how the business works before you even get to the point of needing a digital distributor. You need to know the fundamentals and the basics of the business so that when you get to that point, you know that you're dealing with the right company and you're dealing with the right people, and there are no surprises that come down the road like so many of you have given me examples of that you've had issues with. Knowing and having a good basis of the fundamentals of the business of the music business is going to save you so much heartache down the road. For those of you that are interested in working with ONErpm, go to ONErpm.com and check out everything they can do for you and your career. So I appreciate Ken being here today on the podcast for sure. If you're watching the video version, you've got questions, don't hesitate to leave a comment in the comment section below, and I'll make sure that we can get an answer for you, especially if it relates to ONErpm. I can get those answers from Ken and get them straight back to you. Thank you so much for joining me today for another episode of the Steve Freeman Podcast. Don't forget, if you are listening on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, leave us a 5-star rating and leave us a written review. I would really appreciate it if you did that. The show notes for everything we talked about today are at thestevefreeman.com. There's a link to ONErpm there. Plus, there's a link to the show sponsors, Performance Inspired Nutrition, as well as the Artist Development Academy. Guys, until the next episode, keep being creative, keep pressing the boundaries, and there's nothing wrong with being independent. See you in the next one.
Thanks for joining us for the Steve Freeman Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow Steve on social media at the Steve Freeman.